Okay, so we are starting a new unit, Unit 5. I've created a new folder for Unit 5 in It's Learning. So go to the Unit 5 folder, open the PDF that's titled Graphing Square Root Notes, and all you have to do is read them, okay? I've written all the notes down. If rewriting them down again makes you learn it better, then please put it in your journal. If you can read my notes and follow along with this video without having to write it down, then that's okay too. But what this page of notes is describing two things. One, it's telling you the basics of a square root function. This is what the basic one looks like, the parent function looks like. You need to have the basic graph memorized, both the formula, the equation right here, what the picture looks like, those 3 points, the points 0, 0, 1, 1, and 4, 2. Remember, if I plug in 0 right here, the square root of 0 is 0, the square root of 1 is 1, the square root of 4 is 2. Okay? We don't worry about the plus or minus, because if we did the plus or minus, we would get a non-function, so we only do the positive parts when we take the square root. The domain is bracket here, because this endpoint is solid, it is included, and then you're only going to have one end behavior. We're only going to be going, in this case, right and up. So only one side of this function has end behavior. The other side has a termination point, either a beginning point or termination point. We have the same parameters. We have A, we have C, and we have D, but this time we do have a B. Notice that in this form right here, B is factored out. It is a factored form. It looks like a distributive property, okay? But you will probably have to make it look like this. Also notice that a lot of times, because of the confusion about does this number go underneath the square root or not, they often put D in front up here of A. Okay, so that's why I've written it like this, because you'll see a lot of times they'll stick D in the front just because they don't like sticking a number behind a square root. Okay, so A, C, and D are all the same. You shouldn't have, that's just a review. Everything that we did in transformation so far, we've done A, C, and D. B, however, we have done it before, but it's been a while. B, remember, is inside the function, because the function is the square root, the radical. B is underneath the radical, so whatever we're doing to x, we're also doing it to b. That means it's an inside function. That means it does not behave the way we think it should. So when b is negative, we are going to still get a reflection. That kind of behaves the way we think it should. It reflects it this way. Okay, so instead of going up and down, this point would reflect over here. This point would reflect over here. It's the x values that change signs. So negative b causes it to reflect over the x-axis, and our x value changes signs. When b is a number that's bigger than 1, remember the absolute value right there is reminding you, ignore the sign of b. But when b is a number like 3, 5, 10, 100, it shrinks. It causes it a horizontal shrink. I know it's opposite of what we've learned up here, but that's what you got to remember. Inside changes behave opposite of what you think. And we change the x values by multiplying them by 1 over b. When ignore the sign of b, if b is a fraction, it's going to be a horizontal stretch. Again, it's the opposite of what you think. Okay, what's written down here at the bottom underneath that? It says the domain is affected by reflections, and I really need that. I guess I could look at my own notes. Domain is affected by reflections, and range is affected by reflections. So reflections affect both the domain and range. And shifting it left and right will change the domain. Shifting it up and down will change the range. Okay, so example 1. This is an example of where D was written in front. Okay, so on the directions, I've asked you to list your parameter changes. So be sure on your homework, do this. List your parameter changes so that I can understand for sure that you understand which one's which. Okay, multiplier in front of the square root, that's your A. Adding or subtracting underneath, that's your C. Adding and subtracting outside, that's your D. Okay, so I have a vertical stretch by a factor of 2. That means change the y values, double the y values. Shift left 1, that means I need to take the x values and subtract 1 from them. Shift up 3, need to take the y values and shift them up. Okay, so here's the basic table that I picked from over here, 001142. I did 001142, and then I did these changes. I shifted each one of these to the left 1. Shift 0 to the left, you're at -1. Shift 1 to the left, you're at 0. Shift 4 to the left 1, you're at 3. Okay, so that's where I got those values. Then I took the y values and I doubled them. Why? Because of that parameter right there, A. Double the y and then shifted up 3. I got these new x values. So at -1, I should be up at 3. At 0, I should be up at 5. And at +3, I should be up at 7. And that's where I got my new points. My domain, notice wherever your endpoint is, my endpoint right there is at -1, +3. So the x value of that is the endpoint of my domain. The y value of that point is the endpoint of my range. Okay, I'm not going to go over this one because it's pretty much the same thing. You have a D right here, a -A, and a C. So look that over, apply all that, see if you can do it. Example 3. I had to redo this one and redo my video because I had this one wrong. I messed up. I went the wrong way on the C. Okay, so you have to be careful with this one because at first glance you're going to say, okay, that's a B and that's a C. Well, you'll be correct on the B part, but you will not be correct on the C part because in order to know what C is, it has to be in that factored form. You see right here how B is written on the outside and C is in the parentheses with just a plain X? Well, that's what's going on right here. I've got to get that x by itself so it doesn't have a coefficient. I got to remove any coefficient of x. And if I remove the coefficient of x, I got to factor it out of that term too. So you have to factor this to figure out what B and C are. So B is 2, C is -4. Those are both inside changes that behave opposite of what you think. It says times 2, so think the opposite, so multiply it by a half. Take that 2 and flip it upside down. So multiply your x values by a half. You see -4, think the opposite, that means shift right 4. So what we do is take the x values and add 4 to them. So I did the math, created a table, got my new points. My domain and range comes from the coordinates of that new endpoint. That endpoint is 4, 0. Put brackets. They're both included, and that's the start of my domain and range. Here is your homework assignment. Okay, let me escape this because, oh, there we go. We can see all your homework problems right there. Get these done. We will check these in class on Monday. So whatever questions you have, send me an email. If I get a chance to answer them, I will. I can write it down on a piece of paper and take a picture of it and send you my answer. So if you get stuck, send me a question. The 2 that you need to be careful of is this one. What are you going to factor out of this one? Factor out a -1. That'll make that x be positive because right now you can't see that you have a B, but you do, and you'll also mess up on the sign of C if you don't factor out a -1. On this one right here, be sure you factor out a 3. Okay, so these 2 are the ones where you have to be careful and factor. The rest of these just have old changes, so be careful. Follow the list of instructions or copy exactly what I did. What I did on these is exactly what I want you to do on these. Okay, see you on Monday.